Good morning and welcome. My name is Stacy Metcalf and I am the Director of Western Region Government and Community Relations at Inova Loudoun Hospital. And I'm proud to serve as the 2020 Chair of the Loudoun Chamber's Board of Directors and the Chamber's Public Policy Committee. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our virtual PolicyMaker Series event, State of the Workforce. Virginia has regularly been named the best state for business, thanks to our pro-business regulations, diversity of industry, and access to qualified talent. The COVID-19 pandemic, however, has upended our workforce as unemployment levels have risen dramatically across the Commonwealth. This year, industries such as hospitalities and many small businesses have suffered terribly, while other industries such as technology, financial services, and government contractors have continued to thrive. We are thrilled to have two experts with us this morning to talk about the state of the workforce in Virginia and how we will move forward past this current situation. One housekeeping note before we start: I want to give you all permission to be on your phones this morning, but only for one reason: to share with your many social media followers your thoughts on today's program. And when you do, please use our hashtag, which is hashtag LCCC-policy. That's a hashtag, an L followed by 3 C's. And please also remember to tag the Loudoun Chamber at Loudoun Chamber. I would also like to let everybody know that we will have a curated Q&A session after we hear from our esteemed panel this morning. And we hope to have time at the end to turn to the audience for their questions. Therefore, if you have questions, please submit them in the Q&A box. Provided we have time, we will get to as many questions as we can. Next, I would like to recognize our wonderful sponsors. Today's event and our entire PolicyMaker series would not be possible without their generous support and of our sponsors. First, I want to thank our signature series sponsor, My Hospital Home, Inova Loudoun Hospital. It's hard to believe that it's been over 6 months since our new North Tower opened. It was an accumulation of many years of planning and a $300 million investment in this community. One key benefit that came out of our master plan expansion was that it enabled us to offer private rooms to all patients, which has been instrumental in our ability to keep patients and their daily visitor safe at Inova during this pandemic. We are very interested in this session because our hospital couldn't function without our workforce. Those team members who make sure that we are delivering excellent care day in and day out through their focus on patient experience, safety, and the details that make those often dreaded visits to our ER and hospital exceptional. But our teams, like all of you, rely on small businesses and the industries that have been impacted greatly by COVID-19, and we want to support them as they have supported us during this difficult time. We are proud to continue to support the Chamber and the PolicyMaker series, so please join me in thanking our signature series sponsor, Inova Loudoun Hospital. I would also like to give a big round of applause to our spotlight sponsor, George Washington University. We'll be hearing from Brian Blake in just a little bit, but for now, please join me in thanking George Washington University. Please join me in recognizing our advocate sponsors for the 2020 PolicyMaker series. They are Access Point Public Affairs, Backflow Technology, Bank of Clark County, BCT, the Communities Bank, McGuire Woods Consulting, Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, Modern Mechanical, the National Sports Medicine Institute, Northern Virginia Community College, Toth Financial Advisory Corporation, and Uninet. Please join me in thanking our PolicyMaker series advocate sponsors. I would now like to recognize our enterprise sponsors for their invaluable support. They are Atlantic Union Bank, Community Foundation for Loudoun and Northern Fauquier Counties, Comstock, Dominion Energy, Genelia Research Campus, Sandy Spring Bank, Telos, the George Washington University Science and Technology Campus. Please join me in thanking our enterprise sponsors. It is now my pleasure to recognize the Chamber's 2020 business partner, the Economic Development Authority of Loudoun County, and the 2020 community partner, the Loudoun County Department of Economic Development. Please join me in thanking them for their partnership. And also please join me in thanking our media sponsor, Loudoun Now. And finally, I would like to thank some of the VIPs who are out there with us today. They include from U.S. Senator Mark Warner's office, Bo Machayo, and from the Virginia General Assembly, Senator Barbara Favola, Senator Jennifer Boysko, Delegate Dave LaRocque, and Delegate Ibrahim Samira. And also we are joined by the Chair of the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors, Phyllis Randall, and Supervisor Mike Turner. And finally, I want to welcome my fellow Chamber board members who have joined us here today. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's representative from our Spotlight sponsor. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Brian Blake, Provost and Executive Vice President of George Washington University.
Thank you, Stacy, for the introduction. I'd also like to thank Tony Howard for arranging today's important discussion. For me, before joining academia in 2000, I started my professional career as an engineer with Lockheed, General Dynamics, and MITRE and Fairfax. So many of my products at that time were in Loudoun County. So last year, coming back to Virginia and to George Washington, it was a homecoming, and I'm just delighted that the work that I get to do through George Washington will continue the work I started almost 20 years ago. So George Washington's mission in teaching, learning, and research, really, we hope to be a powerful force for social good. We've committed most of our work toward solving problems through our scholarship. As we all know, real complex problems today, so, and they're multidimensional. They're going to require interdisciplinary impact in order to kind of be successful. One of GW's main purposes as an institution is prepare students to enter the workforce by arming them with the knowledge, the tools necessary to be innovators and leaders with these world problems. So we do see STEM and healthcare majors in programs as a major component of our goals. Science and technology, really have the power to revolutionize the way we do things as we move forward. So we've all seen this firsthand. I think businesses and universities really had to harness technology to move all of their operations to virtual formats during the pandemic. I know we as an institution spent the entire summer and most of the spring kind of retooling ourselves, even though we had an online infrastructure to turn our entire undergraduate population into a virtual category, which really took a lot of work for our faculty over the summer. So I was very proud and gratified to see that work. We've actually demonstrated a track record in technology. Almost 85% of our research is either a combination of science, technology, or in the health-related industries. So I think a lot of what we do really can impact the community of our businesses in Loudoun County. We currently also have over 188 COVID-19 related projects. We even have our own in-house testing suite. So basically, I think we've been very current in the work that we're doing. Still, our Virginia Science and Technology campus is a major gem for the university, a great campus. We've moved a great deal of research and educational training there. We've been established in VSTC since 1991 for over 20 years. We've grown significantly out there. I think we have established ourselves as a powerhouse in education innovation in the Commonwealth, just based on the graduate and specialized programs in the area. Because of our long history in the region, we have gotten some expertise in understanding what training needs are being used for our Commonwealth workforce needs. So one example, and you're pretty proud, I'm a computer scientist, so I'm proud of our bachelor's completion degree in cybersecurity. I don't know if you watched the Labor Bureau Statistics, but they have shown cybersecurity as one of the top, I think, 5 or 6 growing professions. It's increased over 113% between January and June of just this year alone. So there's a great demand for that. This program allows students to complete their degrees in 2 years. They get technical hands-on training in addition to the partnerships we have with government agencies, private companies, and military experts. So it's a great program, really nice facilities and expertise there for that. So much so that the National Security Agency has actually designated it as a Center for Academic Excellence and Information Assurance Research. So certainly we look forward to entertaining your constituencies in those programs. The College of Professional Studies also has a Bachelor's in Information Technology. It combines all of the best training in systems, technology management, consulting, network administrations, network security, health, and IT data analytics. In the realm of data processing, George Washington's Capital Area Advanced Research and Education Network is just amazing infrastructure to allow, obviously for education and research and some private sector organizations in DC and Virginia to take advantage of those data analytic techniques. So, and finally, the ground drill, and I know our Dean of nursing, school of nursing would be on me if I didn't actually give you some information on that. Our Bachelor's of Science in Nursing degrees is a program that's really important. This is another area for the workforce where labor statistics show that this area is going to be up 35% over the next 10 years. So certainly our nursing workforce becomes more and more important in a pandemic and beyond. So what all this means to me, and hopefully to you, is GW is closely tuned for Virginia. It's growing needs for talent in particular fields. I think we're going to continue to evolve our centers and our offerings to allow to be even more closely connected to organizations in Virginia. One of my major goals is to look to see if there's ways for us to co-sponsor educational and project-related initiatives within our facilities. I think we have a great space there, and I think there's going to be an opportunity to kind of make partnerships and have really deep integrated working relationships. And I think we hope to continue to grow our Commonwealth's STEM and health sectors. So with that, let me thank you for entertaining me today. And let me now introduce Dr. Megan Healy. Secretary Healy serves on Governor Northam's cabinet as his chief workforce advisor, as the Commonwealth's highest ranking workforce officer. She oversees a range of regional and state federal programs that connect Virginians to skills, training, and opportunities they need to thrive in the 21st century. In addition to her partnership in government, Secretary Healy works closely with Virginia's labor and business communities to identify and fill vacant jobs in the high demand sectors, including IT, healthcare, and energy. Having started her career as a science professor, dear to my own heart, at Patrick Henry Community College in Martinsville, Secretary Healy keenly appreciates how education can change lives and communities. Prior to joining the administration, she served as Virginia's first director of STEMH under Governor McAuliffe before returning to Virginia Community College System as Assistant Vice Chancellor for Academics. Secretary Megan Healy is a proud product of Virginia's public schools, holding a bachelor's degree in Virginia Tech, a master's in VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University, and a doctorate at Old Dominion University. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Megan Healy.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Brian, and good morning to everyone. I'm so excited to be here, and thanks so much to the Loudoun Chamber for inviting me. I know there's lots of events I've been invited to before. I've never been able to make it, but thank you for today. I wish I was there in person, and I know, but this virtual setting, hopefully we'll talk about some workforce issues today and employment and some business issues. But again, I wish I was there. I just see a lot of your smiling faces because I know a lot of people there. Also, Brian, thanks for all the things that George Washington does. It's funny, my last meeting, I think, before Governor Northam kind of shut down Virginia was at George Washington. I'm on a national group to think about workforce credentials, and we had a meeting there for Work Cred, who's like a nonprofit think tank around workforce credentials. And I remember we were at George Washington campus, Foggy Bottom campus, and a lot of us were in this small conference room, and the lights weren't on. And the office was telling me how they were looking at energy efficiency and how they were having a competition amongst all the colleges about using electricity. And I loved it. And I actually even called my chief of staff that day. I was like, our state agency should totally do the same thing. I loved what George Washington's doing. I also want to give a shout out. You mentioned your Dean of Nursing, Pam Jeffries. I'm in constant communication with her. George Washington's done very innovative work, specifically around nursing and allied health, around simulations. As we heard from Stacy and Inova and the healthcare crisis, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. You know, we need new innovative ways to teach our students. We did struggle a little bit with clinical placements and trying to find simulations and simmans and different things to help teach our students, even if they were doing virtual learning. I know it's been a challenge, but we need more healthcare workers, I think, now than ever. And so I want to thank you for your innovation. So I'm going to try to share my slides real quick. Great. And so really as the Chief Workforce Advisor, as my introduction, is really making sure that all Virginians have the skills to get their dream job. And it doesn't matter the color of your skin, the zip code where someone lives, every Virginian should have the opportunity to get the skills for a good job. And I talk to Governor Northam about this almost every single day. That's what we think about. I remember at the beginning of the administration, we started working on how do we get all Virginians, what are the gaps, if it's by race and ethnicity, if it's by communities, if it's by zip codes. And even a couple of minutes ago, Governor Northam said, hey, how are we doing? Do you think all Virginians have the opportunities to get their dream job? And I still said, nope, we're not there yet. And then the pandemic happened. And so really, it's now more important than ever to make sure that we have the right training programs, the right workforce programs, as well as the right support structures, if it's through childcare and social services and other unemployment insurance and benefits, to make sure that our Virginians are economically safe and that so they can move into particular training. So I pulled Loudoun County unemployment insurance claims. As a secretary, I actually oversee the Virginia Employment Commission. Yes, they have, there's many sleepless nights with that. And when we have opening questions, you can ask me any questions about the Employment Commission. And I'll go over a little bit about our numbers, but in Virginia, over 1.1 million Virginians have filed for unemployment. This is record numbers. This happened really, really fast. Most of the unemployment, if you look at this graph, this would be starting down here, would be looking at March 15th. And it's really like the week before, because we had a little bit of a trend of Virginians being laid off. And then the governor really shut down the economy around March 15th, specifically small businesses, and went to phase 1. And then schools right after that were shut down. So you do see a spike. So really looking at initial claims was the yellow line at the bottom, and those are how many Virginians file for unemployment per week. So this is all the way to the end of October. I think it was October 24th. So we saw a huge spike starting in March, still businesses, but it was really in April. I think our largest week was 140,000 Virginians filed for unemployment in 1 week. The average last year in 2019 was maybe 2,000, was the highest, was between 1,500 and 2,000 people a week. The Virginia Employment Commission, I think, has done a fantastic job this unemployment. So you really think about a lot of the people at our unemployment moved to workforce services. An example is we only had 86 people in our call center starting in February when we had a 2.6% unemployment rate. Now we have over 750 associates in our call centers, and we do have 2 additional contracts, third parties. So we do have people working remote in their homes on our call centers. That's where we put most of our resources to hire. Again, our unemployment insurance system is pretty complicated. It's run by the federal government, so there's lots of rules. So even though at the state level, we wish we can do tweaks, if it's through legislation or working with our state legislators, it's really run by the federal government, Department of Labor. And even though the eligibility has changed and we have gig workers, 1099 workers, we've expanded the benefits past 26 weeks. And then at the beginning, there was an additional $600 per month that were given to Virginians that are unemployed. We're still not sure of that stimulus package, but I'm going to talk a little bit about some CARES funds that the governor has given. This top line is continued claims, so that's really what's important to look at. Those are the Virginians that, and this is particular Loudoun, that are currently still on unemployment. So we are seeing those numbers trend down, specifically in October, that many people have gone back to work. We have estimates very similar to what we heard before of retail and restaurant business. Probably about 30% of those jobs are not going to come back. And so that's why workforce training is more important now than ever. Looking at jobs posting data, this is for Loudoun County, and I did check about some of the businesses that are posting jobs. Consider Loudoun County, but they actually are not in Loudoun County. A lot of them are in Fairfax. But we see that here that the black line is the 2020 trends and the 2019, so a year ago in October, they look pretty similar. So that's a good sign that we're now seeing more job postings. But one of the things that we noticed during the Great Recession is that 99% of all jobs after the Great Recession, the new jobs had to have some type of post-secondary education. So it could be a skill set, but we also saw during the recession that many jobs had inflated educational requirements. And examples are administrative assistants. most of them had master's degrees during the Great Recession. And so that's one of the things we're looking at now. We know that 70% of Virginians that file, a little bit higher than that, who file for unemployment have some college or less. Most of them just a high school diploma, and some college can be a couple of courses. It could be up to a certificate at the community college. But we also know that bachelor's degrees have been pretty stable. Virginia is doing fairly well on the economic front. It's really because of the federal government, and specifically in Northern Virginia, that we know most jobs in Northern Virginia actually need a bachelor's degree, and there's strong pathways to that bachelor's degree. But those jobs have been pretty stable. Again, going back to your lower wage workers, your restaurant, your retail, not required to have a bachelor's degree, mostly high school diplomas. And so that is really the population that we are most concerned about moving forward for economic recovery. You see the job postings, and these job postings are from February, I pulled, to October. Again, look at the bachelor's degrees. It's almost twice the high school diploma. And these are the jobs. So we're going to have to move a lot of Virginians that currently don't have jobs, probably all the way to bachelor's degrees. And we'll talk about that. And then experience is over to the right side here. We did see during the Great Recession a bad experience. We did not see high school graduates get jobs. During the Great Recession, it was more someone who, even if they had a high school diploma, they had at least 10 years of experience. And so that's one of our concerns as well, is when we start seeing more high school graduates, we're trying to move into training programs. And then top posted occupations, I think we heard this from the provost. Looking at this, no surprise, software developers, computer science majors, always highly needed, specifically in Northern Virginia and Loudoun. Truck drivers, we are a lot of transportation, especially with online retail. Always a concern is with CDLs. We are working on that issue. The DMV, I think there's a 90-day wait to get in some of our appointments. And so we're trying to be creative ways of trying to make sure that we can get provisional license to anyone who's interested in being a truck driver, and then also do testing specifically at our community colleges. And so they don't have to go to the DMV. Again, computer occupations, the registered nurses, we have seen a huge issue as another role of mine during the COVID-19 crisis has been the Medical Reserve Corps, that we've had 18,000 Virginians volunteer to work. One of the biggest challenges during COVID-19 has been our long-term care, specifically our nursing facilities. I used to get calls it was always Saturday. No surprise that staff did not show up to a nursing home. These are critical positions, especially the CNAs. We knew before we had a shortage in this area, with wages being fairly low at like average of $13, state average, I think it's around $16, $17 in Northern Virginia, that we had a shortage here. And so really this crisis has exaggerated that at those low wages, knowing that you're working with patients that are infected with COVID-19, it's scary. A lot of our nurses were scared about taking something home to their family, and also working with a challenging population. And so really looking at nursing is one of our strategies moving forward in healthcare. And again, the rest is really childcare workers is another problem that we have, specifically now with so many schools. Starting in September, 80% of Virginians in the K-12 system were virtual, most of them up here in Northern Virginia as well. And so childcare, that we have to have parents that work, and it's really hard and challenging to work, especially like on a Zoom call when you have your child at home also learning, also in the Zoom and in a virtual learning environment. And so we're still continuing. Again, that was a shortage before the pandemic. It's a little bit more of it's a challenge now. And again, those are low wage workers. I think I saw Jim Dyke might be on the call. He's done a fantastic job as a co-chair of the Back to Work Task Force, which is really led by business, of thinking about innovative strategies for childcare and making sure that it's accessible, and really working with businesses to think about how they can help solve some of those problems. One of the strategies we are looking at is for economic recovery is basically credentials as you go platform. education looks totally different these days. We really want to think about building off experiences, if it's life experiences, work experiences, certification, industry credentials, veterans. I know Steve Partridge, I'm excited to hear from him of the great work that Nova's done on specifically veterans with our apprenticeship programs that I've heard about and visited as well. And so really thinking about how is education more of a highway? How do you get in, on, and off the highway with different ramps? Because sometimes Virginians just need to be secure, economically secure. Other times is they can commit more of a time towards an education pathway. And so really thinking about education differently. This is through our veterans program, which is credits to careers. The Virginia plan for higher education is to make sure that Virginia is the most educated state by 2030. They are relooking at these strategies more with an equity lens to make sure that all Virginians can access higher education. The community college is working on their strategic plan. Steve can talk a little bit about that, looking about how do we get more students to complete. Fast forward, we'll talk a little bit about, Steve will talk about that, and other apprenticeships we're working on, and then G3. And really lastly is the things moving forward with COVID-19 is our current budget constraints. We don't see such a problem like other states. I talk to my peers every day about the budget concerns. We did have a close to $2 billion shortfall in revenue, so we didn't have new spending on the budget. Revenues looked up 9.9% in September. So a lot higher than prediction. Governor Northam's been on a tour with economic recovery. We talked to small businesses, CEOs. We're going to talk to workers next week, different types of groups, really getting feedback for our legislative and budget session moving forward. For small businesses, the PPP loans, we've heard over and over again that they are very, very helpful from the federal government. We hope to support that congressional with a stimulus package. We did last week expand Rebuild Virginia. So make sure that you go on the website if you have any questions about that. Now a small business can get to $100,000 past the $10,000. Eligibility was looked at income levels up to $10 million. So definitely more flexibility, and added $30 million. So that pot is about $100 million that we're trying to get out the door by December to help small businesses. I oversee workplace safety for the state. So with the emergency temporary standards, if you have any questions on workplace safety and the moving forward of potential permanent regs around COVID-19, I really want to thank all businesses for making sure that your workers are safe. We've had businesses go above and beyond our temporary standards, and I appreciate all your hard work. Other new modalities is thinking, how do we educate Virginians different? And then we've had some new partnerships and innovation. Thanks to Virginia Ready is a public-private partnership. Around a little bit over 20 businesses are offering $1,000 completion rewards or scholarships. So after a Virginian goes through a high need area, short-term credential, so we fast forward probably at Nova, that they can receive $1,000 after completing the course and getting a certification. The governor announced last week his REV scholarships, reemploying Virginians, and this is specifically for anyone who's unemployed on August 1st or after. They can get up to a $3,000 scholarship to go to the community college in one of our workforce pathways, which is technology, skilled trades, early childhood, public safety, and healthcare. And last is we're launching, we have not come to Loudoun yet, as a network to work. And this is kind of a new, using people's social capital of how to get jobs. This is almost looking at a lot of our businesses still use staffing companies because we have lots of jobs, but how do we use people on the ground? If it's social workers, if it's church pastors, if it's that person in the neighborhood who knows everyone's business, how do we really use them to connect people to the jobs as well as connect them to training? And that's something we are piloting in Richmond and Hampton Roads, and we hope to bring to Northern Virginia soon. So that's a little bit of what we're doing. It's a lot going on. I look forward to your questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Healy. And as you reminisced about one of your last in-person meetings at George Washington University before we were impacted by COVID-19, I was reminded that one of our last meetings in Richmond with our chamber was with you. So, and just on a personal note from ANOVA, thank you for your focus on nursing and childcare. And just on behalf of the chamber, we really appreciate that you're here with us today. And we look forward to the Q&A later on in the discussion. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Steve Partridge, who is the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships and Workforce Innovation at Northern Virginia Community College. Mr. Partridge manages the college's corporate engagement, workforce education, government relations, event services, marketing, and communications. Since joining NOVA in 2016, he has led collaboration between the college and community across business, government, education, and nonprofit organizations to enhance NOVA's position as a critical partner. Under Steve's leadership, the Workforce Division has implemented labor market intelligent capabilities, led the Tech Talent Pipeline Initiative, launched a first-of-its-kind apprenticeship program with employers, including Amazon Web Services, and built employer relationships to address regional talent demands. He has testified before the U.S. House and Senate regarding the national skills gap and regularly consults with congressional and administration staff on workforce issues. Prior to joining NOVA, Steve served as president and CEO of Charlotte Works, the workforce development board for Charlotte and Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. He also held executive positions at Charlotte, North Carolina Chamber of Commerce and the Arizona Department of Commerce. Please, everybody, join me in giving a warm welcome to Mr. Steve Partridge.
Thank you, Stacey. I'll pull up my PowerPoint here. Megan's always a hard act to follow, so I will do my best to tackle all the issues she brought up and sort of go a little more detailed into some of what we're doing here in Northern Virginia. But first, I'd like to start with overall sort of the COVID trends that we've seen, not only in Northern Virginia, but really nationwide. And one, automation. And the reason I bring these trends up is because from a higher ed perspective, it's really incumbent upon us to really help advise our students about where the jobs are going, not where they were. And COVID is really a disruptor. So we've been really participating in discussions around the country, virtually obviously, talking with Megan and others at the state level, really trying to figure out what is coming back and what's not. And so automation trend was something that we were all talking about for a long time. You've seen around our region, robots delivering food to students. You've heard about it in the news, but it's really because of COVID, really jumped into high gear. Over the past 6 months, I think the number of orders nationwide and globally for automation, robots, technology has gone off the charts. You think of fast food locations. When it wasn't safe to bring people back, but businesses want to stay open, they started to invest in automation so that they could keep their employees safe, but at the same time, it sort of disrupts the industry. You don't need as many employees if you have kiosks everywhere. You now check in your bags at the airport remotely. You don't have to have anyone touch your bags. So there's a lot of disruption happening due to automation, and we're really tracking that because it will impact how quickly and if certain sectors recover. Remote work, urban versus suburban. You've seen it probably in the job market. The type of jobs are changing. We're all in a remote mode. Many businesses, many of the tech firms have said they're not bringing their workforce back maybe till next summer. So that impacts a lot of different sectors, thinking commercial real estate. It impacts the roads. I know during the pandemic, we came back to NOVA in June to kind of prepare for students, and it was a quick drive, not something I was used to in Northern Virginia. So how urban and suburban really, how that will play out from the job market is really changing. And there's a lot of opportunity for Northern Virginia in that, as well as maybe companies in the DC market are looking to expand their presence and maybe move out of the district. Economic recovery, this is a big one. Equity and inclusion, a K versus V recovery. For a lot of people, it's felt like a V. You know, a lot of people working remote, it's annoying, but you miss the interaction. But for the most part, you kept getting a paycheck. So things are coming back in certain sectors, and certain people, you know, never missed a beat. But for a lot of people and a lot of industry, it's more of a K. Some industry doing very well. Others, as Megan mentioned, 30% of those hospitality or restaurant jobs may never return. So some sectors are really trying to stay afloat. They're trying to re-envision what they do, how they do it, how delivery, how pickup works. So I think there's a lot of emphasis in trying to figure out which of those sectors won't come back and how higher ed and government can support those sectors to make sure the transition is smooth. And education nationwide has really been disrupted. Obviously, a lot of the K-12 system, I've got 3 kids in various schools, and many of them are still remote. Higher ed nationwide has struggled with enrollment. Nationwide community college enrollment's down around 7%. Luckily here in Northern Virginia, our enrollment actually increased about 3%. So we're really excited about that. And it was a lot of creativity on our team's part, from changing the way we do payment plans to offering different way of scheduling. And a lot of our classes are what we're calling hybrid. Some are in person, where you can't do a biology lab always remotely. So some come back to campus certain days of the week, but the vast majority of our students are online. So how that impacts, because with K-12 remote, a lot of individuals can't return to work. Even if they are willing and able and have a job, they just can't return, which really creates some equity issues, but it also creates some problems for employers who are lacking already a workforce prior to going into the pandemic. And now it's putting in more pressure as certain individuals are sort of taking themselves out of the workforce. A lot of great data. I'll just emphasize that the third quarter posting data, you'll notice the fourth item down is Loudoun. That's the biggest increase of all the jurisdictions in Northern Virginia. But what we saw is the unemployment rate has dropped just below 6% in Northern Virginia, but it's sort of plateaued. It hasn't had any sort of drop beyond that in any dramatic way. So we're now seeing sort of that group that's sort of stuck in that unemployment. And how do we transition them from what jobs were here prior to the pandemic to where we think the jobs are going? So we've also spent a lot of time talking to employers. We've done some convenings of CEOs of healthcare companies, of data centers, of IT companies, and really asked them kind of during the pandemic, what are they seeing? What are the pressures? What keeps them up at night still in the pandemic? And I could have rattled off about 3 or 4 different things prior to the pandemic, that they can't find enough workers, that people don't want to move here, the high cost of living. But really the things that have really stuck and not changed a lot is the diversity of their workforce. That is even more of an issue for a lot of employers. How do they maintain and grow their diversity of their workforce? A lack of available skills. There are a lot of people looking for work, but do they have the right skills in the jobs that are still growing? And that's mismatch was very apparent prior to the pandemic, but it's even more acute now. Adaptability of their current workforce. A lot of people are under a lot of pressure. We heard a lot from the healthcare sector that a lot of their workers are struggling to sort of keep up with the demand of this constant barrage of issues that healthcare industry has been facing with COVID, and how they have the mental health and keep themselves healthy as workers, but also how do they change their policies and practices for what used to be, how do you put on PPE consistently across the region? Every hospital did it slightly different. So we convened a group to talk about that with the different hospitals to make sure our students were coming out with a common way to do that. And retention of the current workforce. Again, a lot of people are sitting on the sidelines. So how do companies adapt to really make sure they keep that skilled workforce employed in Northern Virginia? So how is NOVA addressing a lot of these trends? Well, first, we are the largest supplier of talent in Northern Virginia, with 70,000 plus credit students and another 10,000 plus non-credit students. We are the place that most of the students start in Northern Virginia. Megan mentioned veterans. 15% of our students are veterans. This is highly desirable for a lot of our federal contractors, but in the age of high security, a lot of commercial companies are now looking for security clearance. So we're seeing a lot of competition for security cleared individuals, and veterans are a very highly desirable target. We also have some apprenticeship programs that are targeting veterans, but this population, as they transition from the military, is something that we get a lot of phone calls about. That how is our pipeline? Where do we have these relationships? Can they come in and interview these students virtually? So that group is something that we're very proud of being supportive of. Diversity inclusion. We know about this because that represents our student. We have no majority population here at NOVA. Our population is really represents the country as a whole. We are the kind of organization that we want to have to be able to work with employers and really be able to sell our students' capabilities, because that's when you're looking for diversity, which we hear a lot from the employers, coming to NOVA satisfies that. So we get a lot of employers coming to us saying, can we meet with your students? Can we share about what we do? And how do we engage our students in a different way? We're also the largest producer of community college IT degrees in the country. And in cyber degrees, we're number 5 of all higher ed institutions in the country in the production of cyber degrees. So we're real proud of that fact as well. We're also fast acting and adaptive. As Megan mentioned, we've got a lot of programs. I mean, there is no shortage. There was no 8-hour days since the pandemic started here at NOVA. We continue to push our tech apprenticeship, but the REV initiative that just launched last week with the governor, $30 million pushed out statewide, that basically has to be allocated, meaning we have to enroll these students by mid-December. And so we have a huge push going on right now. So if you have individuals that are underemployed or unemployed, that you know of in your neighborhood, in your business that have been laid off, let them know about this program, because we can get them into some short-term training quickly that can really lead to a great employment opportunity. We also have an Elevate program. It's not here in Loudoun, but Prince William used some of their money along with Manassas to really target residents who were displaced, and again, use that money to pay for short-term training. We've also launched the Fast Forward program in VA Ready. That's been around 3 years, but we continue to update that to make sure that we're doing the short-term training that leads to jobs. And so we're constantly tweaking these programs, and that VA Ready $1,000 scholarship is critical to really help individuals who are unemployed have the time to really focus on their studies. One thing that we didn't see in this downturn thus far is normally the federal government sort of sends a lot of money through stimulus money to the local workforce system to pay for training, to make sure it's affordable. And that didn't happen this time. It was really a shutdown. It was about getting the unemployment benefits to folks and telling them to stay put. Well, that worked because we didn't, I'd say the past 6 months, we actually saw probably the lowest level ever of people wanting to go into the short-term training. There was a mixed message of, you're unemployed, but the jobs will come back once we reopen. But now people are starting to realize some jobs aren't coming back, and there's a little bit of a panic as they know unemployment benefits, at least at the federal level, are coming to a close at the end of the year. So there's this sort of big push right now of individuals calling us asking for the short-term training. So we're real excited to be able to partner with the governor's office and different localities to deliver this training. And then K-12, one thing I'm very proud of Nova being here 4.5 years is when I got here, I heard a lot about Nova, that everyone knew who we were. And it was a good thing to have. Everyone, Nova's great. No one could tell me why Nova was great. It's just, we're here, we're big, we're great. But really, great is good, but I really want to be critical to your business. You cannot survive and as a growing entity without Nova, because we really want to be this indispensable institution. And so we really thought a lot this summer about how we can do that. And we launched the Jumpstart program this summer, where we offered free classes to graduating seniors to help them get their start on higher education. And that was a big lift. Thousands of students applied, several thousand made it through and took up to 6 credits on their way to either Nova or beyond. So we were proud of that fact. And we also launched an early online college pilot this semester, and we'll be rolling it out region-wide, hopefully in spring. So we're really excited about how Nova is a player in the Northern Virginia labor market. And we all base this on data. That's one thing I put down at the bottom is the labor market data has to drive decisions. We have to know where the labor market's going, and we need to anticipate that and be ready with the solutions. So how can you all help today? I'll do a shameless ask of, hire our students, serve on our advisory boards. We offer a lot of programs, and the reason they're good is we like the businesses at the table advising us, hey, you really need to invest in this new technology. Your students need to come out with this skill because the industry is pivoting and changing. But our faculty are focused on making sure our students graduate. We need that input. So serving on advisory boards and having the right people there is critical. We're also looking for instructors. I mean, this IT workforce is not easy to produce. It's very expensive to hire full-time IT instructors because we compete with the private sector, and they can often make much more in the private sector. So we often rely on adjuncts, people that work 9 to 5 during the week, but then maybe on evenings or weekends teach for us. So if you're interested in teaching, let us know. And then we often hear from employers, graduates of whether it's community college or 4-year, come out sometimes not understanding how to professionally present themselves. Their resumes maybe not totally reflective of what that industry likes to see. So maybe giving of your time to do some mock interviews, to do some resume reviews with our students, obviously in the sector that you're familiar with, would be invaluable to our students. So with that, I will end the show and stop sharing my screen, and I guess we'll take questions soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, for that, again, just kind of going through all of that. I know some students that are in, seniors and even juniors that are really blessed. They feel blessed that they can take advantage of a lot of the programs that are happening in Nova. So we are so fortunate to have you and Nova in our community. So now it is time for our Q&A session. And I have a couple questions that I'm going to ask both of our panelists to enable them to do a deeper dive in some of these issues. But if you, the audience, have any questions, I encourage you to please submit them in the Q&A box. Provided we have time, we will get to as many questions as we can after our discussion. So as I said, I've got a handful of questions, and I'd love to hear from both of our panelists. But for the first question, let's go ahead and start with Dr. Healy. What needs to be done and what can the business community do to bring the workforce back to pre-pandemic levels?
Well, thanks, Stacy, for that question. When we looked at closing, the businesses are going through the different phases, and hopefully COVID-19, even though we don't have a vaccine, I think this is a longer road than we all expected. And hopefully, fingers crossed, Northern Virginia is doing a fantastic job being safe. Their workplaces are safe. We have not received a lot of complaints from workplace, and I do review those. People wearing masks, doing the right thing, small gatherings. I mean, that's all appreciated. One of the things that we are working on is, again, we have to move this workforce. That I love how Steve, and he is one of our best workforce directors in Virginia. So it's so nice to be on a panel with him. But just really that skills gap and what he was asking the employers to help support the workforce needs. We do have a lot of Virginians that are not educated. They're scared to go back to higher education. Again, I run the Employment Commission, and I talk to people every single day, Virginians that are unemployed, and they just don't even know, what their next job is, and a lot of them not even know what their next meal is. So any which way businesses can help support the training, because I think that's what we need, and also taking a chance on many Virginians. They might have great experiences, but not the education. And then the wraparound supports too. We know with economic hard times, we're still not sure of that stimulus package. If we get one, we're not sure of the CARES funds that we gave out to localities that also help support businesses, as well as the money for Rebuild Virginia, which are small businesses. And the large businesses, the governor and I had a roundtable with very large businesses CEOs last week, and they seemed they were doing all right. They were actually more concerned about small businesses as well, because that was their supply chain. As well. And so it was really interesting for them to continue. I mean, this is our largest companies to talk about small businesses and how they can help support. So, I mean, we're working as hard as we can with government to for economic support, but I think the changing of the workforce and being supportive and being flexible with their current employees, but thinking differently about hiring a different type of talent would be great.
That's great input. Steve, I'm going to ask you to show your face and see if you want to add anything to this discussion.
Yeah, I think I think higher ed is critical to a lot of the solution here, but I think higher ed has to get closer to employers. I think even going into the pandemic, a lot of we're starting to question the high cost of higher education when you graduate and there wasn't a job waiting for you. And again, as the father of 3 kids, I want them to have a job at the end. I want them to be able to get employed. And that is critical now, because if you're going to take the time and maybe some of your money and you're unemployed or underemployed and trying to put food on the table, you need to know what you're doing is leading somewhere. And so that really puts a lot of pressure on higher ed to really develop those relationships, to really stop offering things that don't jobs and really double down on those that do.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. And again, I know all of us, do worry about our students that are going off into higher education, and then they come out, and especially in times like today, like earlier, that will they be able to get jobs? So I appreciate, and I know the community appreciates the fact that you're laser focused on how to navigate that with the students. We have a next question. Go ahead and stay on, and then I'm going to ask Megan to stay on, because we'll just make this a nice conversation around a table. At a recent chamber event, the Loudoun County Economic Development Director, Buddy Reiser, described a K-shaped recovery.
Stacy, hey Stacy, hold on one sec. Your audio is going out a little bit, and I think we might not be able to hear you.
Okay, why don't you go ahead? Can you hear me now? Or
I can hear you now. That's much better.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I'm sorry, technical difficulties, as we all sometimes experience during this time of COVID-19. Okay, at a recent chamber event, Loudoun County Economic Development Director Buddy Reiser described a K-shaped recovery. The high-tech industry trends up, and the high-touch industries such as retail, restaurants, and hospitality are in a steep decline. What is your outlook for the workforce employed by these high-touch industries as we head into winter months? And Steve or Dr. Healy can go ahead and take that.
Sure, I can try to tackle that one. I think Buddy's right. I think I think everything's becoming high tech. I mean, that, tech isn't just an industry anymore, it's a competency, and every industry is adopting it. I was on the phone with one of our big financial service partners. They're a bank on paper, but really they're a tech company doing some banking.
Yeah.
And that's what you're seeing with the retail as well. If you look at Amazon and some of the companies that are giving local retail a run for their money, they're tech companies delivering goods and services. And I think for local retail, that high touch, I think you're going to see technology start to mimic that. How do you create a high touch environment with technology that keeps both people safe, but it will require fewer people to do it. And so that's the sort of transition. But those that are left in that sector are going to be much more competent and skilled in technology. So it's no longer just, I did this after high school for a little bit while I tried to figure out what I was doing. You have to have maybe certain credentials because systems need to be rebooted, or certain things will require you as an employee to intervene in that technology and have some of that knowledge. So I think it's going to push the knowledge chain further up than what used to be your traditional retail job.
Dr. Healy?
Yes, I agree with Steve 100% on this. I mean, if you think about the trends in jobs, what Virginia's invested in the last couple of years is really tech talent pipeline. If it's through the Go Virginia grants that Northern Virginia's gotten, that Loudoun's been leaders in through their K-12, if it's integrating computer science standards from kindergarten, and I even know like pre-K is even thinking about, technology and algorithms and kind of computer science. It's a way of thinking and logic. Just to basic digital literacy, I think is an important foundation to all future jobs, but really all jobs today. And then how do we integrate that into all things education? I think it's important. It's not a standalone class. Computer science used to be in a high school or a middle school or part of almost a career and technical education program. It's really something that we need to integrate in all levels of education. I think it's important, especially now. When you think about remote work, cybersecurity, people working from home, they're dealing with security issues and information. And we have now cloud computing, which Northern Virginia Community College has been a leader in. I mean, all that's transitioning and changing, plus the large investments in the tech talent pipeline, specifically to Amazon. But our higher education package, which was close to $1 billion, really was to lift all tech companies in Northern Virginia to make sure we had talent for everyone. And I think continuing to invest in those areas is important. But the challenge will be to move the bottom of that K. How do we get them quick training? Because some of them just need to be economically stable. They're worried about food on their table tonight. So how can we get them quick technology training through quick credential, 6 to 12 weeks that we're trying to push, so they have some competency in technology that they can continue their education and build upon when they feel more comfortable in the job.
Thank you for that. And kind of weaving the conversation over to, the CARES Act. So what impact have federal economic stimulus packages, such as the CARES Act, had on employment in Virginia, and where have they made the most difference?
Just in case we might have had our audio go out again a little bit, let me just read that one for us. Thanks. One more time. What impact have federal economic stimulus packages like the CARES Act had on employment in Virginia, and where have they made the most difference?
Yeah, I'll answer that. So I'm going to talk about first unemployment and where that was and how that helped support Virginians. And then I'm going to talk about the business side. And so during, it was April, it was March, I think 29th is when the CARES Act was signed, 28th, 29th, that they expanded eligibility for unemployment. So, right, so that gig worker, 1099 person now received unemployment that never happened before. During the Great Recession, about 40% of people who filed for unemployment actually qualified or eligible. Now we're sitting around 80% of Virginians that have filed for unemployment, 20% are not qualified and that eligible, and that's for multiple reasons. Usually employer dispute, someone has been fired or not completely laid off, or someone quit a job. And we've seen higher numbers of people quitting jobs because of potentially unsafe work environments. They have the same with their kids, but in other reasons, of course. And so really that extra stimulus funds from the CARES funds, it was $600 extra a week. Really what it was supposed to do is make sure Virginians stayed home, right? And they felt if they lost their job and been furloughed, we saw large furloughs in healthcare, even though we have that as a high growth and high demand sector. we saw some furloughs there. We saw furloughs in county administration offices. So a lot of different furloughs. Most of those people have gone back to work, which is a good thing, right? Fingers crossed. We don't have another huge spike that we have to digress in our different phases. And so, but the CARES Act, actually the extra $600 left to the end of July. And we did see a lot of people go back to work after they did not receive the extra benefit. About 50% of Virginians were actually making more unemployment benefits than their current wages. 50% were making less. It was set at that US median around 48,000 is what the benefit structure was. And so now there was some extra benefits through our lost wage assistance program, but now the benefits are back down to the normal unemployment insurance benefits, and we are seeing people go back to work. The CARES Act, I think really what we'd rather have is Virginians stay on businesses' payrolls. And so really the PPP program was very successful. We billions and billions of dollars to help small businesses to make sure that they can make payroll as way, pay for additional benefits, pay for rent. I think that was really successful. In Virginia, when we look at revenues and we think of state income tax, we always like people to not like I want to take tax from people, but the payrolls, it actually helps support our revenues. We are one of 5 states who actually don't tax unemployment insurance benefits, and we've since March have given over $10 billion, close to $10 billion in unemployment insurance benefits, and so that's not taxable as well. And so I think that's really, really important. And then also for employment, we are starting a work share. It's also called short-time compensation program that we're going to start implementing next year, and that's kind of a partnership between the Employment Commission and businesses. So if an employer has to have their workers go part-time, then they would get a cut in wages, but they would also get a little bonus from the Employment Commission as well to kind of help support Virginians. And so other states have that, and we're going to start implementing that next year, that we're working on that system now. But I really think the most benefit, we've also the CARES funds for broadband, expanding that. Where we know we have big data centers in Loudoun, so you have the best broadband, I think, maybe in the world. But we're trying to support that for anyone who's teleworking and don't have broadband. And then a lot of money has gone to the CARES Act to our hospitals if it's from testing. Now we have rapid tests that helps with employers before, because people would have to sit out 10 days if they're just waiting for if there's a negative or positive test. It helps with PPE funds that make sure people are safe on the job, especially in our hospitals, as well as some helping with reimbursements in long-term care. So I think there's been lots of great, we're really, really thankful for the CARES Act. Again, we're not sure what the next stimulus package is, but I think it's just really boosted our economy. And without the extra federal funds, we would be in a really bad situation.
And the only thing I might add is student aid. A large chunk of money came in to help students that were in the spring were in classes and had to transition to remote. And if you think about our students, 60% of our students work. So a lot of them, if you think about where no students might work in hospitality, where they're working part-time, they're working retail, and those jobs disappeared. And all of a sudden they're trying to finish their studies, trying to pay their bills. So having those emergency aid dollars that came into our students, some use it to buy laptops. I mean, a lot of our students came in person, they had computer labs they could take advantage of. Now they're doing it remotely and didn't have the technology to really fully participate in the online learning environment. So these dollars were critical to help our students succeed in a remote learning environment, but also even to pay bills, because they were often hurting, and unemployment and all those other services had not kicked in yet. And I remember that because I saw Jim Dyke in the Q&A kick in there, reminding everyone on November 12th, Nova is having our annual virtual dinner, and those dollars that we raise go back to our students.
Thank you both. Can you hear me? Yeah, good. All right, so you both spoke about this in your opening comments, and Dr. Healy, you spoke about job postings requiring post-secondary requirements, and then you went on to say about taking a chance, and Steve, you also talked about how you're revising, curriculum and things like that to address this. So how do we quickly and efficiently help customer-facing workers in hospitality, retail, and travel industries retool skills to take available jobs now and then backfill those jobs when the companies are ready to hire during recovery?
I'll start with that, and then Steve can talk about particulars for Northern Virginia Community College. I do want to thank David Hunt. I'm not sure if he's on here, and he is the director of SkillSource, which is the local workforce development area director. And so he's done a fantastic job. One is with our REV, so our Reemploying Virginia scholarships. Most of that money is going to the community college system specifically to help those that are underemployed or unemployed with up to a $3,000 scholarship. David Hunt also has additional money to help work with private institutions on the same kind of concept. So if someone wants to go to a private training provider, they could also, if they go full-time, get up to $3,000. I've also, we have some discretionary funds or rapid response funds that we released to the community, specifically around the airlines business, because we saw lots of layoffs, especially Dulles and DCA or predicted, right? So they're actually, we haven't seen it like we actually thought we were going to. But again, that's one of those that we're looking at retraining those workers as well. So we have our workforce career work centers, then we have our workforce services, and then extra training dollars to do more of the short-term training to get anyone into NOVA or some of our private training. I think it's just really sending that message. To be honest, I started my career in Martinsville, Virginia, when they lost a lot of textiles and furniture, and unemployment rate was over 20%. And really sending that signal that you can. And again, going back to what Steve said, I think higher education is really, really important. That they need to go back to get training. And I've seen this, and it was in the early 2000s. Having that signal, telling them, one, they can do higher education. So many of them have been out of education a while and they're scared and think, oh my gosh, a math class or an English class. The community colleges read on their courses. So if you want to go into technology on day one, you're going to be behind a computer and you're not going to have to take some of those courses, or we can do fast track training. There's some flexibility in your education, but just really sending that signal. We have tons of jobs still open. And really making sure that people see themselves in education and know that they can do it is really important.
Yeah, I think, back to the making sure we're advising people correctly and let them know what is in demand. This is an opportunity. I mean, any crisis, you want to take advantage of it to sort of fix some maybe systemic problems. And we have had some real problems in making sure the job markets align correctly. We graduate a lot of people every year from our high schools, from our universities and colleges. Some of them leave and go elsewhere. Others stay here, but they don't have the skills, because we see a lot of them come back to NOVA. I'm not going to pick on any degree, but let's just say you got a history major. And then you come back and say, the jobs in Northern Virginia require me to have some tech skills. We see a lot of people showing up at NOVA asking for these credentials, but think about it. I just went and borrowed all this money and I got a history degree, and I have to go back to my community college to get some skills to make my degree more relevant to the job market. So we're really trying to make sure for these unemployed folks that we're giving them these credentials that actually have value beyond just a one and done. I mean, there are credentials you can go quickly do, and you do it something else, some other job, until your job comes back. We understand some people say, I want to return when the market improves, but there's a lot of people saying, I want to maybe go into IT or healthcare. What is that first step I can take, a CNA or an IT program, maybe it's an IT help desk, that I can get my foot in the door, but then if I like it, I can keep going. And it's this stackable concept. And we talked about stackability, and Megan knows this. We talk about it, but it doesn't really work. It takes a lot of effort to make something stackable. So we're really proud of NOVA, at least on IT, we built you get credentials that are through the Fast Forward program. You can then take that credential, march it down the hall at NOVA, and get credit in our credit program towards our IT degree in cloud computing or cybersecurity. And then we're really excited that if you keep going to cybersecurity and want to get your bachelor's degree, you get those credits transferred. You don't lose that. And so we're trying to be very methodical in thinking of building a pipeline so that students really can start at NOVA with these short-term trainings, and they build as you find you have an interest. Because the biggest areas we were short in workers prior to the pandemic was IT and healthcare. So this is our opportunity to really take some folks who maybe are underemployed right now and get them on a career path that just doesn't replace wages, but puts them on a path to really grow their earning power long-term to a family-sustaining wage.
That's fantastic. Thank you both for really thinking forward and fast forwarding a lot of this work for those who are out there that really do want to have degrees that are relevant and obviously get jobs that are relevant out in our community. We have some time now for audience Q&A. So I am going to hand over the agenda to Grafton, who's going to read a couple questions for you.
All right. Thank you, Stacy. Thumbs up if you can hear me. All right. Great. Hey, our first question is from Vanessa Maddox. And Vanessa is asking, I operate a recruiting and staffing firm in Loudoun. How do I partner with the state or county to provide services to underemployed and unemployed Virginians? And I guess I would offer just a slight alternative question as well, is how do HR professionals statewide, whether they're a recruiting staffing firm or someone internal to a company, how do you partner? So how does a private recruiting staffing firm, but how also could internal HR partner with the state?
Great. I can start with, and then I know Steve, how he particularly partners with employers, and it's a fantastic job. For our workforce system, so again, going back to kind of our workforce director, David Hunn, in the area that we are doing virtual job fairs through our Virginia Employment Commission. We had a statewide job fair with over 5,000 Virginians looking for a job in over 200 businesses. We've moved those to do local job fairs through our Employment Commission office. So I think that's one thing. Two is posting jobs. We do have a jobs board for anyone who's on unemployment or also co-enrolled in other federal workforce programs, and we'd have a jobs board there. So make sure that you're a partner with our career work centers to make sure that your jobs are posted there as well. And I think that's important. And then also any type of training provider. We love employers that interview students that are almost completed in any type of program, because I think that is just sends that partnership, that real signal to our students that their jobs available. So I think that's a third way that is really important. And I know that a lot of the employers work very closely with our education institutions and training providers.
And I'll echo what Megan said. Getting that real world experience to our students is critical. So anyone on this call wanting to volunteer and either do the mock interviews or resume prep or just interview our students, we'd love that. If you just send me an email, spartridge@nvcc.edu, I'll put it in the chat in a second. We have an entire career services team with thousands of employers that post jobs every year on NOVA's job board. So we have, again, 70,000 plus credit students, another 10,000 plus non-credit. So if you're looking for that talent, we have it. But if you also just want to give back and sort of say, hey, I can help during this pandemic, we have students that could use your assistance. And so we appreciate anything you can do.
Great. All right. Hey, next question. We don't have a name by this one, but it's a good one that affects not only folks in Loudoun, but I believe all over the Commonwealth. During the pandemic, we had a large breakdown in our food supply chain. What types of programs do we have to support our rural businesses and industries to bolster an agricultural workforce pipeline? For example, small farms that are providing more foods to their local communities are in need of more support services.
So I can answer this question. This has been a challenge. We've heard across the Commonwealth about the particular layoffs in the agriculture business. We hear of stories of the dairies, how they really struggled with dumping milk, as well as even the food supply, not even to our restaurants, but to our schools. So many of our counties had worked with their farmers that farm to table in our school divisions. And since they were closed to virtual, a lot of those accounts also were closed. And so it's been a struggle. There has been some federal dollars to support farms. We are seeing a rebound, but it's still been a challenge. One of the things that we have seen is around 20% of Virginians have some type of food insecurity. So really working with our food banks to provide fresh food. Also, our Department of Social Services has been really engaged through our 211 efforts to know that where the food banks are, and then really how does the food banks and different community centers provide more of a fresh food to work with our farmers has been really important versus kind of the traditional canned food, because we've seen more and more of food insecurity and making those connections. I think when schools go back, it's going to be helpful, and restaurants are doing better, but they're still not at full capacity. And so to continue working, I mean, it's continuing to be a challenge as well. And then also just shortages too. And then we also saw some meat shortages at the beginning of the pandemic. We also saw workers, and they are in our poultry plants. We did struggle a little bit with workplace safety and infection rates. And so they are back. I don't think we've had a positive test in our poultry plants since July, which is fantastic. So I think that also the trends and ups and downs of agriculture, it's been interesting to watch, but we tried at the state support it. Our secretary, Bettina Ring, she is fantastic. And I know she's always updating us on the food security issues, but also the agriculture issues.
Steve, jump in if you'd like, and if not, I'm going to go ahead and ask the next question.
I think Megan covered that one. We don't do as much in the education side in that group. So
perfect. All right, two similar questions. Actually, Vanessa asked another one, and dovetails nicely with a question that we also received from Tracy Baynard. I'm going to attempt to put these two questions together. And for our panelists, if you look in the Q&A box, you can see what I'm reading as well. But from Tracy Baynard and also Vanessa Maddox, it sounds like once we get people to into Northern Virginia and the Commonwealth, they can be directed to programs that can help in a short time. How best can the chamber help you get the word out to the audience that needs to get this information? And so what's the best way that we can, we, the chamber and this community and and our employer base, how can we best help get this information out?
Yeah, I think it's critical to get the word out because, I'll use the Elevate program, for example. We use some CARES Act funding in Prince William and Manassas. We started that program at the end of August, and they did some mailings to their residents. We did some digital marketing. It took about 4 weeks to start to really see any sort of real numbers of people showing up asking for help. So even though you think we know there's a need for this training, we know there's people that need to be reskilled, often they don't know where to go. I mean, we are all bombarded by messages all day. And I don't care if it's federal money or state money or local money, no one likes to see like 60% of it go to marketing. So you try to put as much of those dollars into the program, and there's very little for sure that outreach. It's usually word of mouth. And so, especially with this REV program, as I mentioned, it has only about a month and a half to really get people enrolled for classes that can start beyond that deadline, but we have to have them enrolled by mid-December. So we need your help in getting the word out, not just to businesses, just to the community as a whole, and doing it more than once, because we know in the marketing world, it takes more than one impression to get you to sort of act. And so we need you to constantly put it in your newsletters, put out emails to let you know these dollars are here to help people, but there's an expiration and we need your help in getting that word out.
Yes, I would agree. Yes, we're trying to get a lot more of the money to the training dollars and not outreach. And government does a horrible job of marketing anyways. But even if you're an employer and some of your workers, you did not lay them off, but they're going part-time or they're decreasing wages, and you're thinking about those particular part-time employees can get reskilled or earn a new job, that they actually can also qualify for the new REV grant. So thinking about that. I know that there's also some on-the-job training opportunities through David Hunt's group that I think some of the CARES funds have gone to that to look at on-the-job training and to partner probably with Nova and some other training providers as well. But really, I mean, it's really word of mouth also. I mean, it's scary. I mean, it's scary just to lose your job. I mean, people cry on the phone. Like I said before, I talk to them every day. I have some walking them through how do you certify for unemployment. But just say that they can do it and there's a job and this is going to change their life. I think it's important to get them in training and just that encouragement, any which way you can encourage somebody, say they can do it. I think that's the most important. And also thinking about really demonstrate that, their life can be changed. And some of you as an employers that you guys help that, right? You give people paychecks to live better lives. And I think it's really important.
Great, thank you. All right, our next question is from Monty Mercer at Genelia Farm HHMI Research Campus. For workers paid hourly that did qualify for benefits that are no longer given, or excuse me, that will no longer be given in the traditional sense. Does Virginia offer any support that to support the companies that are offering these benefits, but are asking employees to pay for their benefits up front in case the offered hours don't meet the minimal hour requirement for coverage? So that was a very specific question. I think you guys can also read it in the Q&A to make sure you capture all the details there, but I bet that is pertinent to some. Go ahead, Steve, if you're ready, fire away.
No, I was going to say, I'm going to probably defer to Megan on that one, since it's more of a state program, if one exists, that would be able to address that.
Perfect. And
I have a question for Monty. Is this what type, the definition of benefits, what specific benefits are you thinking about?
great. All right, looks like that one's going to need a follow-up question to get a great answer. Hey, Monty, email me and I will get this over. I will connect you with Dr. Healy and to get an answer for that question. So thank you so much. All right, our last question, and this is a great one that I think is very relevant to all of us right now, no matter the industry we're in. How have either of you remained positive during the last 8 months and looking forward to Virginia's future?
That's a great question. I'm very excited about this because, as Winston Churchill once said, never let a good crisis go to waste. This has allowed us to really look internally at Nova and how we structure and how we deliver services. We've changed tons of stuff that I think in a normal year would have taken us, 3 or 4 years to do what we did in the past 6 months. And we really challenged our team's assumptions about what students need, how we deliver things. We redid our entire website in 120 days. That's normally a year-long process to do a major redesign. So I think it's really motivated people to say, we have some challenges in Northern Virginia, and how can we be even more relevant to the community? And what do we need to do as an institution to be that relevant organization? So it's stressed all of us out. I know one of our provosts is on the call, Julie Leidig today, and she could attest that, we used to meet 2 hours a day at the beginning of the pandemic, 6 days a week, as a leadership team, talking about how the organization needs to morph and change. Luckily, we're not doing the daily meetings anymore, but it has really pushed us, and we're all very motivated to do it because we see the impact, not only with our own families and friends, but we see the destruction some of this has caused across Northern Virginia, and the inequities that existed all along that we knew we were tasked to fix, but become even more apparent. So we are even more motivated and excited to deal with these challenges because we think now is the time to fix them. I mean, it gives us that kick in the butt that we really needed, I think, to make that change.
I think that's a great point. So you think about the positives of COVID. What keeps me every day doing my job, and it's been a long, I guess, 8 months, and I think it's going to be, is really thinking about every morning, how do I help Virginians? And that's really why I took this job as a cabinet secretary, is I think that every single day. And then now with these extra economic challenges, with the health challenges, and being innovative and creative and helping Virginians, I think is something that gets me up every single morning. How do we make things better? How do we, if it's our system, there's unemployment insurance, the workplace safety standards to make sure that workers do go back to work, because if workers are not working, then our economy is not going to ever recover. And so that is my number one priority, is making sure workers are working, and we have to think about safety, and we also have to think about skill sets. And going back to what Steve said, is specifically if we know that many Virginians need some type of training, education, higher education specifically, that I love how innovative our higher education institutions have been. We have 2 million Virginians that have some college, no degree or less, and many of them are working. So if you think about these virtual services, these flexible schedules, we should have had this 10 years ago, thinking about those working adults that are trying to better themselves. And now we actually have those options thanks to higher education, putting more training in virtual, doing more simulations, being flexible, starting different semester times. I think it's fantastic. And I think if we move towards that direction, really the people that we want to get reskilled are a lot of our working adults who are working three part-time jobs. To get them into meaningful employment and that career path, we have to have different ways of educating them. And I think that we've seen fantastic work come out of our education institutions that help support that. And especially with Northern Virginia, we need more people with technology skills in that foundation. And that's pretty easy to do that on online and virtual services to teach technology. It's one of the easier ones to do than some of our other career paths.
Thank you, Grafton. Thank you, audience, for those great questions. Dr. Healy and Steve, can you still hear me? Okay, good. I do have one last question, and it's about resources and information. There's been a ton of resources and information shared today that will impact and guide our workforce through the pandemic into recovery. What are one or two resources that you feel are most critical for employers to get their hands on so for their employees at this time?
So we put a lot of information on governor.virginia.gov. There's frequently asked questions specifically around a lot of the initiatives, if it's through Rebuild Virginia, if it's through, for me, for unemployment, employment, workplace safety, links to the REV scholarships, that link actually to the VCCS. So we have a lot of information on that. My webpage is also on there that gives my contact information. So it's at governor.virginia.gov/workforce. And also I see that David Hahn put in his information. And so he is kind of the workforce boss in the region. And so with his programs, with the extra REV funds that he has that's outside the community college, he can help connect the Virginians in here that are unemployed with the workforce services, as well as the extra funds that he has for rapid response. And so it's a team effort. We all work together. And so if you contact the wrong person, hopefully there's one door that you can get referred to someone else. As well as I do have an email address if it's for any kind of workforce questions. I have a huge team that answers this. We've received probably, I think, 20,000 emails during this pandemic on all things workforce, and that's workforce@governor.virginia.gov. So if you have any just general workforce questions, you can also email me there, and I'll put that in the chat.
For NOVA, in the chat, I just added it's nvcc.edu//rev. That is the page, sort of the localized information about the next 6 weeks to get folks enrolled in this program. So I'd encourage people for that. But I want to also thank Megan and her team for all their support they provide in the pandemic. Workforce is a team sport. We cannot do this on our own. There is no pocket or agency that has all the money and all the resources to get people to the finish line. So it's almost designed that we have to all cooperate. The workforce boards are underfunded, the community colleges are underfunded. We all try our best, but together we do have the resources, but it takes a good quarterback to really make sure that happens smoothly. And Megan has been amazing over the past 8 months. And before the pandemic, there's not many people in the governor's office you can call or text and they get right back to you. So I want to shout out to Megan and her team for providing the leadership during this challenge.
And I want to shout out to both of our wonderful panelists for this morning's discussion. And for those of you who, again, we threw out resources and said that they were going to be located in the chat. As a chamber, we are pulling that information together, and we will get that out to you, because I know that you all can't see the chat, but we will get that information to you. And then I just want to, again, just thank our panelists, thank them for this robust discussion this morning, this important discussion. And I want to personally apologize for my technical difficulties on this end. Steve spoke about being bombarded by messages, and my first message was my computer audio went out, and then my system wants to reboot. So I've been trying to hold up everything so I didn't totally crash on you today. But I'd also like to thank our audience for their help in shaping this dialogue. And again, thank you to all of our sponsors, including our signature series sponsor, Inova Loudoun Hospital, today's spotlight sponsor, George Washington University, and all of our PolicyMaker series advocate and enterprise sponsors and partners. And finally, let me thank our elected officials who joined us and our chamber board of directors and honored guests who came on today. I think that this was such a wonderful discussion and, a testament to our panelists and of course our chamber who helped us pull this all together. So thank you, everybody. This concludes our program, and I hope that everybody goes off and has a nice, beautiful business day.